Hey, thanks for coming back. So in this video, I want to talk about spiritual experiences and what they really are, in my opinion. And also the people that have them and then don't have them and the whole shooting match there. All right. So, okay, what is a spiritual experience? Some people would call it a miracle or something like that. But what is it really? It's really synchronicity. It's everything in the universe kind of aligning at the right moment in order to produce something which to an observer is inexplicable and so inexplicable and so kind of cool and amazing that it's an affirmation that something's at play that is kind of beyond the person's preconceived separate personhood. There's something going on here, and it's not me. Okay. Now, synchronicity is happening all the time and every day because ordinary life is absolutely magical and it's incredible. All the things that are happening in order to support life here and all the different ways it's being supported. And some people are hip to that, or they're very innocent, and they're able to perceive it and appreciate it regularly. And we look at those people, and they're very innocent, and they're open, and they're open to receiving and appreciating these synchronicities that happen. And so for them, they're affirmations. But for other people who, for whatever reasons, are more up in their heads or resistant to receiving the synchronicity as an affirmation, or their sense of self is so rooted in separate personhood, and their identity is so rooted in all the things that underpin separate personhood, that they aren't ready for it. They can't see it. So in this first video, I'm going to talk about a couple of experiences I had when I was younger that could easily have been what you would call a spiritual experience. They were evidence like that I would now see as just total affirmation that we're being lived, that I'm being lived, and that there's a beautiful, silent presence holding me in this dream together here. And now I feel it, and I live it, and I love it. But for, a long time, no, I wasn't paying attention to it, and it's ordinary stuff. So, okay. When I was about 17 years old, I was working on a tugboat down in Mississippi. My parents sent me down there, and it was kind of like war. It was either boring or it was terrifying. And, the other guys who were working on this boat with me were big dudes in their 30s and 40s. One of them was a self-described murderer that said he had murdered someone and nobody, caught him. And then another guy was a total racist. And he was insisting that I be a racist. And so I was under some stress there. These two guys bunked in my bedroom with me. And the work was hard and dangerous, and, I had the graveyard shift, so I'd be out there with a light, and I'd be carrying like 100 pounds of equipment on me along the edge of a barge. And there was a swift current in the river next to the barge, and the barges were being banged around and moved, and the weight of the barges and the ship pushing them together was so intense that if like a tree were to be between these two barges, it'd get flattened into a pancake. That's how much force there was. So you had to be constantly watching for your survival, and you'd be walking on slippery stuff, metal stuff that had like rotting soybeans on it and like spilt fuel oil and shit like that. And dim little light, and it's like, 95 degrees, there's mosquitoes biting you, and you're 17 years old, you're far from home, and it's the real deal going down. So every step you're taking, you're mindful that it's, you could lose it. And if you fall into the river, you're toast, because A lot of times it would just drag you right underneath these rakes that were up above the water, or if it happened when the barges were coming together, you'd be way down in the water. They can't stop these things. You'd be toast. So, that anxiety slash fear, I'm sure it built up in my subconscious. And about probably, I did this 2 summers. I went back for a second beating because I wanted to master being a deckhand. So over 2 summers, I probably had 75 night terrors. Now, I don't know if you know what a night terror is. You probably do, but you're having a nightmare and you totally, you're about to be killed. So I'm having a nightmare that I've fallen off the boat, but I'm in some weirdo situation where there's I've managed to fall down onto some little ledge or something like that. And the barge is coming and it's about to crush me. And I've got about 15 or 20 seconds before I'm going to be crushed to death. And I completely believe it, right? And then right in the middle of that, I wake up. So I'm awake, but I'm still confused and in this dream state of I'm believing the nightmare that I was having. And I would go about doing everything you would go about to try to get out of this hole that I was in. And I'm telling you, when I went nuts, I went around that room this direction, and then I went around this direction. We had the windows covered with tin foil because we also were sleeping between 12 noon and 6 p.m. And so there'd be these little tiny slits of light, like sometimes along the edge of the tin foil or at the bottom of the door, there'd be a little slip of light. I'd be down there furiously trying to get through there. I'd be screaming for the captain. These guys in my bunk room were so freaked out. They told the captain that they wanted me to be chained to my bed, but he wouldn't do that. So anyways, every time, just before I was absolutely convinced that I was about to be crushed to death, and I had about maybe 5 or 10 seconds before I was going to be, turned into a pancake, I would give up. I'd stop struggling. I'd stop screaming. I'd be quiet. And this huge peace would come over me. And the power of this peace, the power of the silence, time would stop. The last 5 or 10 seconds of living were so intense. They were so beyond time. It was almost a place of pure being. And then I'd wake up. This happened like 75 times. Now, pure being, timelessness, peace. I could have picked up on that as what's going on here in the background of my frenetic kind of separate personhood thing that was going on, but I didn't pick up on it. And so that was when I was 17 years old. I was not ready. The spiritual experience happened, and I'm convinced they're happening to everyone all the time, but we're just not ready to see to feel what we're being presented. In this case, it was an ordinary nightmare, but there was tremendous value and tremendous teaching available to me. I didn't get it. Okay, so fast forward, I'm 40 years old. My mate and I been together for, 4 or 5 years, and I'd been thinking about having a child my whole life. My upbringing hadn't been what I'd wanted it to be, and so I really wanted to fix that. I wanted to reboot that. I wanted to have a child, a couple of children, have that be like a fantastic thing with me and the kids, and like I hadn't had as a kid. So finally, my mate and I got ready, and we decided to conceive this child. We conceived the child the night that we were expecting to, and so her pregnancy was really, really blissed out, and all during that pregnancy, I was looking forward to having this child, and I thought about what it was going to mean to be a father and how excited I was to be a father and all that. So finally the day comes where it's time, she's in labor. We go to the birthing center, the midwife center, and she has this long, pretty tough, time of it. And I think she was in labor for, it was a long time, 4 hours, 6 hours, or I don't know how long. It was a pretty good long time, and it was nerve-wracking. And as it started to really wear on, the midwives that were in the room, they took some vital signs of both her and the baby, and they freaked out. Like the baby's heart rate was down to like 36 or something like that, and her heart rate was falling. And they realized that if they didn't get this baby out like really soon, it was probably going to die. Okay, and I'm sitting there like my whole life has been wrapped up around like this child, you know. The tension, man, it was so thick. I mean, the anxiety was so freaking thick. And they were kind of white, and they ran out of the room, and they went up and they got the head doula. Wish I could remember her name because I'm forever grateful to her. Chapel Hill Midwives place, and she was so experienced that she had the presence of mind to know to take her hand and stick it up into there, and she was able to feel. She had to break the water in there, but she was able to feel that it was an unusual placenta. It was a sepia placenta. It had like 5 umbilical cord arteries attached to it instead of just the one. And so had she gone up in there with the razor blade and just cut the thing and not felt around in there, she could have cut an artery, and it could have been lights out for the baby and maybe even for my mate. Could have bled to death. But she went up in there and she cut that thing, and the water broke, and the baby came out. And so the baby came out, and I'm telling you, the baby came out right after a moment of the most intense tension and worry and concern I'd ever experienced in my life. So that's happened like literally 2 seconds before, and this baby comes out, and it's a midwifery place, and so they don't do all the usual stuff that other places do. So she takes the baby, she just holds it in her arms. She doesn't spank it or anything like that. And up to this point, like, I had been completely fantasizing about how I was going to be like the daddy, and I was going to teach my kid all this stuff, and I'd learned all these things, and I had all this life experience and wisdom and everything. And she's holding my girl, my first girl, and my girl does this thing. She goes like this. The room is completely quiet. No one's talking. Everyone's looking at this infant that's just come into the world. She goes like this. She does this thing. I probably can't do it, but she does this thing like this. Like that, just looking at us. I mean, in that gaze, in that silence, I was totally aware that I was in the presence of Buddha. That empty, innocent, unknowing, blank baby was everything I had ever hoped I might be. And it was the most humbling thing I've ever experienced in my life. I realized that all my stuff, my storyline, my everything, all the shit I'm proud of and everything was nothing compared to that empty, innocent awareness right there. And so, right there, opportunity number 2. I could have seen through my storyline and all the crap that I thought made me, whatever I thought I was, better than average. But no, it didn't have the power. I wasn't ready yet. And so I want to, in the next video, I'm going to tell you about some more experiences where I was ready. And so what's going on here? My readiness. And what's interesting about this next one I'm going to tell you about is that these 2 opportunities for me to be ready happened within about 10 minutes of each other. So for me, it's kind of a proof that it's really not about the experiences that are going on out here that could be affirmations that this is a absolutely magical universe, and it's totally synchronistic, and it's like the fucking coolest thing you can possibly imagine. And there's magic everywhere, synchronicity everywhere, miracles everywhere, but we aren't paying attention to it. So anyways, next video, I'm going to talk about those.